Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Paperless Movement YouTube channel. And today we will talk again to Noah Silverstein. If you missed the previous sessions, we will quickly recap what we created so far in the CODA platform. If you followed the first two sessions, this one will be the final one that will be publicly available to watch. And then we will keep working on this platform afterwards inside the community until we finished it and launch it for the members as well. But this is a very important key feature that we talk about, which is integrating the Circle community as a CRM into the whole platform. What all this means, don't worry, we will figure it out along the way. But now let me just get Noah on the stage. Hi, Noah. Welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, again. You're still pumped for this.
I'm always excited. Always excited to build some CODA docs.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's quickly for all the members who are just joining today for the first time. The goal here is that CODA and the Paperless Movement and CODA, we teamed up here and we want to build a productivity system platform for the Paperless Movement members. So I had this idea, having a proper comparison platform for my members available where we can fill in our data, what tools we use, our own tool reviews and all this, and then link it up with our accounts so it makes it much easier to compare other people's productivity systems with each other. This is the ultimate goal. I know many of you are excited and eager to get your hands on this, and it will be ready soon. As we already showed in the past two sessions, we come a long way. But now let me just quickly share my screen. And I give you a quick overview again. So this changed a bit since the last time. It's a bit easier to understand. Let me see. You can see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is more or less the final product that we see here. So we have the CRM in the middle. And Circle is actually the community platform that we are using for the Paperless Movement membership. And the goal is that we will be able to create a user form to fill in the tools that you use, the issues that you have with the system, and so on, but link it to your Circle profile. So this is will all be done through CODA. And by this way, you will have your own productivity system inside the community available. And then we also have the tools database that you can leverage for your productivity system to pick the right tools. At the same time, you will have a tool review form. So if you're already using a tool for a long time, you actually can create your own review. According to iCourse, so all this, if you missed the previous sessions, probably it's good to watch this again. So we will fill up the tools database with tool review forms here, with tool reviews through the form, and then make it comparable. So this looks very abstract looking at this, but the final result will be awesome. I'm 100% sure. Then I also running surveys. So another thing is to get together the survey results with our members inside the Paperless Movement membership. So I better understand whenever I have a one-on-one coaching with you going, that I just quickly can go in here and see what you already answered in the past. So we can use our time in the most efficient way possible. So sorry, this was a bit all over the place. I'm just so excited to get started here. The goal here that you might have just seen from this picture is now to integrate the Circle community. And no worries, we won't share any email addresses or anything like this. So we made some preparation in upfront. So it will be only us two. So I'm sharing your screen now, and what we see here, there's the people's database in the middle. And in the previous sessions, we showed already we created this people's database manually, and in order to have an example. And that's the same thing that we do now with the Circle database, the data that we pull from the Circle community now. It will just represent Noah and me and myself and nobody else. Okay, Noah, you can take over. Maybe you can explain it in a more structured way now again.
Yeah,
I know you can do an awesome job there.
Yeah, that's a great intro. And I think maybe we can just, pick up where we left off. But I think looking at that top level diagram that you created is a great entry point. And just, to remind ourselves, I think this kind of bubble you've drawn in the middle, this is the boundaries of the CODA doc. And so far, we've worked within the doc. We've worked on kind of the core databases that keep track of the tools. After you fill out the forms, we keep track of your reviews, we keep track of your productivity system. All of that lives within the CODA doc. And so, what I was showing a minute ago, these data page, this is kind of the core tables that we've built out, the core databases that keep track of, what are all of the tools that people might want to rate, who are the people who might want to rate them, and then what are the ratings, which is kind of a mix between those two, where each person can connect to one tool and add their rating for it. And previously we had, mocked this all out in a CODA doc, but, in lots of cases with this example of a CRM and many other cases, you actually have your data somewhere else. And you don't want to have to, add every person who joins your community manually to the CODA doc. You want to be able to pull data in and push data out. And in CODA, we have what we call packs, which, among other things, are our integration layer. They're what allow you to pull data in and push data out of your CODA doc. So, some simple examples of that, maybe I want a list of all of my emails from Gmail or all of my calendar events from Google Calendar. They can also take actions. Maybe I want to connect Slack and automatically send emails after my meeting is done, something like that. And in this case, what we're hoping to do is to pull in the data from your community directly from Circle.so. And the really exciting, or one of the really exciting things we announced at Block Party just a little while ago, is we're making it such that anyone can build their own pack just by writing a little bit of code. And small enough, measurable amount that really anyone who is willing to look at some examples and fiddle around with it for a little while should be able to write their own pack. And so we're going to kind of talk through that process today, not in huge detail. We're not going to do live coding session, but enough that you can see the process of what it means to have your own data source and to be able to build a pack and pull that data in. So I think what we're trying to end up with is very similar to this people table, but instead of creating this in CODA, we want to have that created in Circle. So we'd love to end up with a table of members from your community that is just synced right in. So I think we can dig into the details. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, before you go ahead there, maybe we add the emails now. So we just finished this manual setup with the emails that we set up for Circle. I think there was Noah testing and Tom testing.
So I think we made.
So it makes more sense what we will replace there. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just some fake emails that we've created for the two of us. But the idea is we'll want to end up with something similar to this and to be able to connect that up with the data that's coming from the pack. So I think I'll just kind of skip the excitement and show you the end product, and then we can talk through how we got there.
Sure.
And so what that looks like is if I just use the little / command and start typing, you'll see that there's a new pack that I've created. This pack is the Circle.so pack. And just like any other pack in CODA, I can, bring up the listing and see what it has. In this case, I've built a pretty simple pack that has one thing and one thing only. It has a table for members, and I can sign in to install this. It'll actually ask me to set up an account. I've already done this ahead of time, and it remembers my credentials. But basically, you just generated an API key, kind of like a login for your community. And I'll just go ahead and add that account to this pack. And now I have access to this members table. And if I just drag in this members table, just like any other table that lives, in a CODA doc that pulls from a pack, it'll go ahead and sync in the members directly from that service. And in this case, it sees there is the first one. There's Noah. And shortly thereafter, we'll also find you. You're later down in the list. And this is pulling in, some basic information like name, email, headline, and bio, but it has actually a whole bunch of detailed information as well. What's the user ID? What's your avatar? When did you join the community? What type of tags you have associated with you? Those are things you can manually add. All of the links to your social profiles. So all sorts of, very useful, detailed metadata in there.
Love it.
So this is kind of the end state that we're going to get to. And the question, of course, is how did we get there?
Well, you just download this pack that you just created, right?
Exactly. You just ask Noah, and he'll build the pack for you, and I'll share it with you. Yeah, but the cool part is I actually built this morning. It didn't take me very long at all.
I was really surprised. I mean, I was tinkering around with APIs a while and so on, but yeah, it's awesome. If it is your daily job, this must be really fun creating all this stuff. And it's fun to me working with you together on this and have this, look, how can we integrate it? I give you the API, done, within what was it, minutes or hours?
I think it was under an hour, so I guess minutes.
See? Great.
So, where did this data actually come from? Well,
so guys, remember this when you hire an CODA consultant, it's under an hour to create an API and a pack there.
Setting high standards. Well, if you're
sorry, guys.
It depends on the complexity. I've written a very,
of course,
very simple
thing. Of course. This was very straightforward here. Yeah, very straightforward.
But you can see that Circle actually has this very nice, large detailed API that lets you interact with your data and do all sorts of things. But what we care about, there's all sorts of information about the different spaces and groups you create, all your different members. But what we really care about is just the members themselves. And there is basically an API endpoint, which is a URL that you go talk to, just like you go open up any website. And what it does is it retrieves all of the members from your community. And so if we tell CODA to go fetch from this URL with the right credentials and the right parameters, it'll get back a list of all of the people in your community. And that's pretty much exactly what we've done. We've created a credential so that it knows you're authenticated and you should be able to get at the data. We tell it exactly where to look and what data to pull and how it should represent that in CODA. So to show you the kind of most basic example of what it means to build a pack in CODA, I've just made a hello world example. I clicked create a new pack, and this is what you're presented with. We call it the Pack Studio. And basically it allows you to write the code in JavaScript that you want to write to build a pack all within your browser. You don't need to set up any kind of local environment. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to know how to use terminal, nothing like that. Really all you have to do is create a new pack, just like you'd create a new doc. And this is kind of the most basic example, which is describing to you what it looks like to make a pack. Everything in green here is a comment, so it's not actually doing anything. It's just describing what it is. And at a very high level, we're saying, get some constant stuff from CODA so that you don't have to start from scratch. This is called library. Make a new pack. We're just calling it pack. And then this pack here consists of one formula and one formula only. And that formula is a hello world formula. And so we gave it a name, we gave it a description, we gave it one parameter, which says, what name should we say hello to? Do you want to say hi, Noah? Do you want to say hi, Tom? You, as a user in CODA, will put in a name. And then all the formula does, it returns back a string, which is hello, and the name. It says, hello, Noah, hello, Tom. So this is what you start with. It's, if you've never seen code, maybe it looks a little daunting, but if you just take a minute or two and read through it, it's a pretty basic set of instructions. It says, make a formula, if you know what a CODA formula is, which takes a parameter name and spit back a string, some text that says hello name. And once we're happy with it, all we have to do to actually run this code and to use it as a pack in CODA is click the build button. And what this will do is it'll package up all of your code nicely without having to do any work into a new pack ready for you to test. And if I go ahead and create a new CODA doc now, and I type hello world, that's the name of my pack. It should just find that for me. There it is, there's the hello world pack. In this case, I don't have any kind of credentials or anything, so I can just install this pack. And just like I showed you with the other pack, I now have a formula, which I give a parameter. I'll say, hello, Tom. And when I run that formula, hey, presto, the formula runs. And nice. You have all sorts of control, pack maker tools where you can look at kind of debug information about what's working or what's not working on your pack if you need to write, debug statements or things like this. But at the base of it, what we've done is you write some simple code right here in your browser, you click build, and it shows up in a CODA doc. And if I want to make a change and, say, hello, Tom, I hope you're having a great day. I can make that change right here in the code, and I can click build again. And what will happen is this will build a new version of the code. So we were on version 1 before, and now this will build up the second version of the code with my change. It says there, V2 successfully built. And when I step over, you can see it's actually already updated and pulled in the second version of the code. And if I go ahead and refresh all of the formulas, it'll resync that data. So if I just paste this in again, there it is. It's synced with the new data. Hello, hope you're having a great day. So you can do all of this in your browser. It's very, very quick to go back and forth. It's honestly much easier than using most developer environments. As someone mentioned in the comments, yes, it looks a lot like Sublime. So this is using actually an open source platform that is used for VS Code. So if you've used VS Code or any other kind of modern editor, this will look very familiar to you. There's all sorts of nice information here. You can hover over things and it has documentation. There's, all sorts of references for different things you can do. We have lots of documentation about how you can write stuff. We have examples in here. So it's a full-fledged, kind of development environment ready for you. But it doesn't have to be complicated. You can write very simple packs like this. And in the case of the pack I've actually written for Circle, it's really not very much longer than what we just looked at. So this is the whole pack right here. This is the Circle pack. And most of this pack, most of these lines are actually taken up by this, which is basically just telling CODA what a member in the community, in the Circle community, looks like. I'm saying, each member has a name, a first name, a last name, an email, so on and so forth. This is the stuff that comes from the API that we just have to kind of tell CODA what are the shape of these items. So basically I'm telling it, is it a string? Is it a number? For the avatar, for their icon, I'm saying, hey, it's actually an image attachment. So it's a link to some kind of photo. For when was this user created or when did they join, I'm telling CODA, hey, this is a date. You should interpret this as a date time. So most of this is actually just kind of telling CODA what is the data that we're going to be looking at. And then what I have done is made a sync table. So packs can create a number of different things. I showed you a formula, but in this case, we are creating a sync table, which pulls in data and you can resync it as much as you want. And in this case, we're just calling to the community members endpoint from the API, that same one we were just looking at a minute ago that says list all of the members in your community by going to this community members endpoint. I'm doing a little magic here to just show Tom and I for the use case of this example. And for each of them, just feed that back into CODA. We don't need to dig too much into the details, but that's it. That's all of the code. It says, what is the data going to look like? And then, where should I go fetch the data from? And CODA is smart enough to do everything else you need to do. Really, all you have to do is tell it where to get the data from and what the data looks like. I think a really good example of that, when I'm actually setting up the pack, I told it that you need to set up some kind of authentication. In this case, it's called a header bearer token. That's kind of the technical term for an API key. And I didn't have to do anything to make the UI for that, to make it nice to interact with. I just tell CODA to use a token. And then every time someone goes and adds this pack to their doc, they'll be prompted to add in their own key. So CODA handles a lot of the difficulties for me, and I don't have to deal with any of that. And the end result is I get this sync table that has all of the data ready for me to use.
That's awesome. That's perfect. So we see it now right next to each other, and each other. So the people table and the members table. So now we can just get rid of the manual table. However, we will destroy our connections this way. So how do we replace this now non-destructive?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a couple there's a couple ways that we could do this. In terms of having a source of data, we could make a decision and say we actually want this people table to be the source of truth and to kind of connect up to the members table. So maybe we want to say, actually, I just want to know who is the Circle member associated with each of these people.
So let me just quickly. This would be then the people table would be a real CRM, and we could just expand it with notes section and so on. But we also could use the circle table, the synchronized table, and add columns there. Is this possible too?
Yep, absolutely.
So we could use this as the single source of truth then.
Right. So these are kind of two approaches.
But we are limited to what is in Circle, right?
Right.
This way we would be limited to what is in Circle.
Yeah. So to maybe talk through both of those examples, because I think they're both valid choices that you might want to choose depending on where you want your source of truth to be. If we decided we actually want CODA to be the source of truth, maybe you have some people listed in Circle, but you actually have some other people you want to keep track of or to be able to submit, but they aren't a member of the Circle community. So you want to be able to manually add them in. Then maybe this would be a good option, would be to have CODA be the source of truth, but then link up to the external source of data to Circle. And so what that might look like is, just like other lookups in CODA, I can have this be a lookup to the members table. And then we could write a little formula that finds the person, the correct person in the members table, maybe based on email or based on name. We could batch that up however we want. Let's do it off of email just as an example. And so I could write a simple formula like take all of the members in the members table, filter them down to be the ones where the email matches the email in the current people row. And in that case, it'll find each appropriate person. So it matches up. This is Noah from the Circle table. This is Tom from the Circle table. And the benefit of this, of course, is if you wanted to add someone who wasn't in Circle without having to go through the external service, through the third party, you could just add in here another person. The downside, of course, is it means you have a source of truth that you kind of manually need to update. Maybe we could build out an automation that says if there's a new member in the members table which hasn't yet been synced up, we could add them to the CODA people table. We absolutely could do that. The other option here
that's
is
the must-have, I guess.
Right. So that would be to kind of keep the two sources in sync with each other.
Yeah.
The other option is we could, completely get rid of the people table and just use this members table. And there, as you said, we have all of the data that's coming from Circle. I can pull in user ID and everything else I want directly from the API that pack is linking in. But I can also add, I just want to have notes on each person. And this is new, extra information that will be, saved even when I resync this members table, because it knows that there's some unique entity about each of these people. There's a unique ID. It'll actually keep those notes around. It won't get rid of them. So do you have a preference between those two?
Well, I think it's interesting to have one manual CODA based source, because I just imagine getting in, ConvertKit, getting back to this one. So I actually see the state of the member. So when when they're not part of the circle, maybe I want to see, are they actually inside the newsletter, or the what membership tier are there, things like that. I can see this through the text in the ConvertKit class, or I could even hook it up with the MemberPress plugin that I use on WordPress and use their API to pull the data in. So really exciting stuff. But I think it's good to have one table where everything comes together instead of having one. Let's just imagine I switch community, although I didn't.
That's a great point.
Not planning this.
Great point.
But then you're lost, right? I mean, could you disconnect it and make it like a normal table again? So like
this sync table? We could copy the data and move it into another table if you kind of wanted to freeze it or make it static. You also could just choose not to sync it. So with sync tables in CODA, you have the option of if they sync, by themselves, or right now it's just set to manually syncing. So if I never resync it, this data will just stay there. It won't be, if I lost access or something like that. But I think you make a great point, which is that if you changed, community providers, then what do you do if all of your data is based off of this one source? I think the other point you made about having multiple sources of data that really should connect to one CRM is a really great point. Maybe you want to pull from your community. Maybe you even want to pull from your emails. You could pull from all different sources. Maybe you have a Slack channel that, the number of people or the people are in Slack doesn't quite match up with the people who are in Circle. If you sync that all in one place, you could even get really smart about it. You could say, I see, someone who is in Circle but isn't yet in my Slack community. And so as soon as I see a new row in the Circle table, I should automatically add them to the Slack or something like that. So I think actually having that single source of truth is a great idea.
Yeah, and then we
So-
just have to ensure that people will be tagged that they are part of the circle community, right? So when we have
Right.
this form, only the circle people will show up and not the whole list of people that are on the newsletter.
Right. So, maybe just to,
I mean,
to show how
as
we
soon
do
there
that.
is data coming in from the circle, circle member empty or not empty, just already explains if
That's
it is
exactly it.
in
So
or
we could
not.
just add in a little formula that says, hey, is that circle member, which is looking up to the other table, is that blank? Because they should be a member. Actually, it would be is not blank. So, as long as there is a match, then they're in the community. But if I add a new person and there is no circle member that was found, then we know they're not part of your community.
Yeah, exactly. So
Great.
how do we set up the automation that when this person is not in the table, that we bring it in? I think it's very important to also go through this as well.
Absolutely. So if I just come into the settings for this doc, we have automations. These work, very similarly if you've used something like if this, then that, or Zapier, some kind of automation tool, which basically allows you to set up some kind of trigger that says when something happens or at a certain time, take a certain action. And so we can add a new rule, which is, new circle member. And what will happen is we have a couple types of triggers we can choose. In this case, we'll want to look at row changes. We'll want to say when there's a new row in the members table, then we should do something, right? So the case we're thinking about is, I wasn't previously part of your community. Noah didn't exist. But then you see that Noah was added. And so you want to add me to the CODA CRM. And so, in this case, let's just say that there was, a row change that, in the members column. We could add conditions here. And in this case, we will want to make a condition because we don't actually want to do it anytime that, a new person is or a new person is changed or a person is changed, because we only want to do it once. We want to do it if that person doesn't already exist in the people table. So we could add a condition. And we can say, I think actually the easiest way to do this is to add a little bit of a back reference that we can determine whether it's been linked up or not. And so, just like we've done in the past, we have this nice little helpful blue dot that writes the back reference formula for us. And so if I look at, lookups, again, it's saying, hey, I noticed that you were referenced by the people table, and this will find the people in the CODA people table that are referenced with this. And so this is the CODA person, something like that. And, we could add a checkbox here, just like we did above. And this checkbox is is the person matched yet? Or maybe to be a little bit more explicit, are they in the CRM, in CODA CRM? And this, we can write a little formula that, again, is just, is CODA person not blank? And as long as, we found a match, then they're going to be in the CODA CRM. But, for example, say I, didn't have my email here, then, or, we thought this was a different person, then it's going to say, no, you're not actually in the CODA CRM. It didn't find any link. In this case, I don't think we're actually going to do much with that column other than this. I'll just go ahead and hide that. I think really what we care about is, are they in the CRM or not? So we can add a condition in here in our automation that says we only want to do this if that person isn't already in the CRM, right? And so what we can do is we can reference step one result. And that means, in this automation, we have a series of steps. That first when, we call it step one. You can see there's that little one there. And step one result outputs a row from the members table, because basically it has found a row that has changed or a row that has been added. And so what we'll say is step one result, and then we can pull out, in CODA CRM. And we only want to proceed if they're not in the CODA CRM. And so what I'll say is take the row that changed, the member in the circle table, figure out, pull out the property, are they yet in the CODA CRM? And if they're not, then we should proceed. So that is the rule that we've added, the if condition. So it says, okay, we found a new row or a row changed. Are they in the CRM, or are they in the CRM yet? And if they're not, then take some kind of action. Does that all make sense so far?
Absolutely, yeah. Just go ahead.
Great. And so the row that, or the action that we'll take is to add a row. So we will add a row to the people table, and we can set the values that are important to set. Right now, we can actually just set all of them. We can say we want step 1 result dot first name. There should be I think it, because I haven't pulled out first name yet. So if I go ahead and pull out first name and last name, there we are. Step 1 result dot first name. We'll pull in the last name similarly, where we'll say last name. And finally, we can actually put in the email as well, because we know their email from Circle. And that should be it. So we can actually go ahead and test this. And you can see it actually just filled it in for us like that.
Yeah.
So that happened really quickly, but it found a new row that was created, and it saw that it wasn't yet in the CRM, and so it added a row.
But it created a new, yeah, it added one.
Yep, and it did exactly what we wanted it to do.
So why didn't it? So we should rather update the row. I mean,
right.
Now we are looking for. Let me just recap this.
Yeah.
In this automation, we are looking for so we should rather look for the email if it is available, right? This is really the single point where or the identifier that is the best.
So we could look at email. In this case, it wouldn't actually change anything because the member is kind of like an object that contains all of the information from that row. It's the sync object. So you can see it has all of the information in it. So that is also unique, but doing it off of email works just fine. So you'll see actually, if I run this again, nothing will happen. And that's because it doesn't find any which aren't already in the CRM.
Yeah, right.
So anytime that a new row is added, if this table was resynced and it found a new person, it would add them in, but it wouldn't do it twice.
Yeah, so if you change the first name now from you, it should update the name, right?
So that's a good question. Right now, we don't have it set to do that. So you're saying if in Circle the name changed?
Add row. Yeah, we are in an add row. Yeah, right.
Right. So those ones are just not connected because they are synced to that specific row, not to the entity in some unique form. It was synced to this row 1. But if there was a new person, they wouldn't yet have any ratings, so that wouldn't matter.
Yeah, but yeah, we could set up. I mean, no need to do this now, but we could set up a recurring automation that just happens every 5 minutes and syncs back first name and last name, and then we need to identify that Circle is actually the single source of truth, because people are active in a community updating their name or bio or whatever, and then we sync it back to the manual database that we have above, so we really have the updated data available. Or how would you approach this?
So actually we could be a little bit less specific here, and we could say if there's any change in the members table, and then instead of doing add row, we could do add or modify rows, and we could say add or modify the people table, and then we'd filter it down to find the person. So this would be very similar. It would be
always the email. I mean,
yeah, we'd have to do it off. We could do it off of name.
It will break. It will break the moment people change their email.
Right. So you need to have some kind of unique attribute.
So it would be the ID.
So you could use the ID. If you want Circle to be the source of truth, you could use the ID from Circle.
Yeah. And then we could pull it back there, and then we have this automation, then it's independent. So that whatever they change, we could update any source.
Exactly. And so that would, if anything changes in the Circle table, then push that back into the people table. I will say, if we're getting to this point,
this is already, getting very complex, but I think these are the pitfalls where we can accelerate very easily building these systems up. And then we're running into things like this. The more complex, as soon we bring in ConvertKit as another source, which stays with the right email, and then this becomes really
Right.
Yeah, fancy.
So this is always the challenge of having multiple sources of truth, right? Even in this very simple example we've concocted, we have two sources of truth. We have the CODA source of truth and we have the Circle source of truth. And they're connected, but they're not synchronized automatically. And so we're having to do all this work to figure out where the data should come from. So if any, maybe this is an argument that the source of truth should be Circle. So maybe we'd reconsider our choice and go back to the beginning. I think another frame of this is we choose email to be the unique attribute about each person, and instead we then pull out all of the appropriate information about that person from the email. And so what I mean by that is, instead of having a first name and a last name, which are just text here, we could actually formulaically pull them out from the Circle member. So as long as we have an email for each person, we should know who they are in Circle. And so we could pull out their first name and their last name directly from the Circle table. And so that would mean the only thing that we need to keep up to date is the email. That is kind of the unique binding element that keeps them together. If we decide we don't actually want that, if we want people to be able to change their email, then we need to do it off of some kind of unique ID, as you said. And in that case, I think you have to choose something like Circle to be your source of truth.
Especially when you're linking up other sources as well, ID is really the one to go for, because that's the thing that you can't change. And why not having several IDs from the different systems, so we can identify this person in each system by their ID, whatever they change. So we could even split then the emails and say that's the email in Circle, that's the email in ConvertKit, and identify the same person through this just because they changed the email, something like that. So yeah, it can become wild. I just want to point out, because in the Paperless Movement membership, we talk a lot about single source of truth, and it is a dream to get everything into one place. But these are really the things that makes it pretty tricky. But it also shows how even more worse it is to do this all manually, duplicating information and keeping track of different systems. So this is why we have this mind map that I showed in the beginning. It's very important to lay out your system and what you want to connect it with where. It makes it much easier to get a bird's eye view on how your system actually looks, instead of looking at this view right now where you have a bunch of tables and then try to do everything right.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And figuring out that from the beginning, thinking about your schema before you get too deep in the weeds, or even using a simple example. What we've done here really is a very simple example of the two tables, and so we kind of discovered this problem early on. Is another great way to do that. Sometimes it's hard to visualize the whole thing in advance, but I think what you suggested is a great way to do it. So I just, as an example, I just modified this automation that now, instead of filling in the email and the name and whatever for each of the people, it's actually putting in the Circle ID. And so if I rerun this, it'll add a new person, it'll just manually paste in the ID from Circle for that person. And of course we could do this for multiple platforms. What's your Circle ID, what's your Slack ID, each of those things. And then we pull in the Circle member based on the ID instead of based on the email. And so this means now if the email changes, it wouldn't break things.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
Of course, we can pull data, but can we also push data to the systems?
Yeah,
via
absolutely.
CODA, using CODA with the packs? That's interesting.
Absolutely.
So it could truly become the overall hub to manage the whole membership and everything. So somebody reaches out and says, I want to change my address. I usually do it for them instead of pointing them there. And so it's just a bit of service. So having everything in one place, having one table there, and then just go quickly in there and change it, it gets pushed. That's great.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you're going to the reference here as well. So as soon we have, it's put, not push.
Yeah. So this is, I think, exactly what you're looking for, which is they have an update member endpoint, which basically says which member do you want to update and what do you want to update about them? Do you want to change their Instagram URL? Do you want to change their bio? And just like we wrote a formula in the pack, you can write an action formula, which you put in a button. And when you press the button in CODA, it'll go talk to the API and make a change. And so you could even, build out a whole workflow where you have a CODA form where someone, chooses themselves from the Circle list and, they fill out what they want to change and it automatically puts it in the queue for you and you just have to click approve. And when you click approve, it automatically uses the pack and goes and updates the data in Circle. So you can absolutely do that.
Yeah, nice. that makes it even more interesting now.
Great. Okay, so let's, I'll just go ahead and go back to the emails for now to keep it a little bit simpler. Okay, does that, I think we've talked through how the
before you
automation
carry on, I just want to point
Yeah.
something out for the people watching. This is the big difference between using Notion and the databases and using CODA. So what you see on the right with the automations, this is what you can do in Notion. Yes, you can now integrate external like Zapier or Integromat to use the API, but I think on this level, it's not possible in Notion. And especially not without using any third party. This is the point that I want to make here, because here we can create everything natively within one tool. And
Yeah.
I always looking for ways to further improve, not using Integromat or using Zapier and have everything going end to end instead of having something in between that carries around my packages.
Yeah, and I would say even similarly, being able to write the pack. There's lots of awesome services that have APIs. It's kind of becoming the standard on the internet. But often the biggest barrier for people who might be willing to, copy an example of code and try modifying a little bit. There's lots of people who would copy some CODA formula from the community or copy a complex Excel formula and modify it a little bit. But a lot of the barrier often is setting up the environment where you could actually do that. If you're going and working with the Slack API, you have to, download VS Code, you have to install the appropriate libraries, you have to figure out how to use Terminal and to talk to their service, you have to figure out how to deal with authentication, you have to then connect that to some kind of online service that's actually going to run the script or whatever you've written. And so there's a huge barrier to entry to be able to do that. And what I think is so awesome that our team has done in building this is it's all in CODA. I went just like I made a new doc, I clicked new, and I paste in the example and it works. I did nothing else. I didn't have to set up any libraries. I didn't have to worry about authentication. I didn't have to know what to install or where to put it. It did all of that for me. And so being able to do all of this means it's much more approachable, even for people who don't think of themselves as coders, but think of themselves as someone who is, willing to copy and paste, willing to experiment and to play around with what someone else has already given them or look at an example. Then they might be able to build a pack themselves. And all of that, then add automations to this, add the rich, powerful formula language and tables, really means you can build out a solution that works however you want it to work.
I love it. Yeah, I really love it. Good.
Okay.
One more question.
Like
wait.
Yeah,
one more.
As many as you like.
That will be because we want to finish something here as well. But this is an important one that just came to my mind yesterday, thinking about this again. We want to restrict access for the members. So this is exclusive to the membership. How do we do this? Because we don't have an on-page level option to share, or how could we? I don't know. So when I paste it inside, can I have some domain restriction or any ideas? It's not as easy.
So there's lots of options depending on what you want to restrict and to who you want to restrict it and where it's going to end up.
So for example, would it be possible that we can, just like for Vimeo videos, all right, I can say it is only possible to watch these videos on this domain. So this would be the straightforward way I would expect this to work, but maybe it's too high the expectation here.
Yeah.
So I know the restrictions of CODA with the hiding
we don't
pages.
Quite have that level, but we have lots of different granularity of sharing and publishing that allows you to choose who sees different things. If, for example, we wanted only a certain number of people to be able to look at the output, to look at the tool ratings, I think probably what we would do is we'd actually create a separate doc, which is kind of the viewable entity, and we would cross-doc this table over. And the reason for that is, this doc is, probably going to have some sensitive information. It'll have emails, addresses, things like this that we wouldn't want people to have access to. And, the kind of final output table is a pretty simple, list of text and ratings. And we have, cross-doc, which allows us to pull data in a table in one CODA doc and move it into another CODA doc. And I think this would be a great use case for that. Basically, you build a second doc, which is the world viewable doc or a certain subset of people viewable doc.
But what about the restrictions that we have there with the crosstalk?
Yeah.
You mentioned something, I think, earlier, that you're working on improving the crosstalk functionality.
Yeah, so I mean, we're always looking at improvements. I think some of our new features like canvas columns will kind of force us to think about how that works a little bit more. Nothing set in stone. But currently, the main limitation with crossdoc is it only can pull tables between docs. You can't pull data on a page. In this case, that really doesn't matter.
Oh, well, in this case, it doesn't matter then.
It's perfect. Right. And this is what we find, quite honestly, most of the time, is the information you actually want to sync between different areas is what lives in a database, what lives in a table.
So then...
And so in this case, it actually works great for us. We sync the data, in this table into another doc, and we can display it however we want. In terms of making it accessible to a certain group of people, there are a number of ways we could do that. Obviously, we have, just like lots of other online collaboration tools, you can manually choose who has access and what type of access they have. And so, the most basic form you could imagine is I go manually, add Noah's email, add Tom's email, add each person's email, and say they can either view it, they can comment on it, they can edit it. Probably in this case, just view only access is what you would want, or maybe comment. For people to be able to interact with it. But that seems a little tedious to me, and so there's a couple of forms of restriction you could take, or ways you could make that easier. One of which is just like everything else, there's a pack for it. We have a pack that allows you to, it's called the doc list pack, kind of modify and interact with your docs. And one of the actions the doc list pack has is to update sharing permissions on a doc. And so maybe every time there's a new person added from the circle table, we automatically share that doc with them. And so they have access to it. And so again, we just set up a little automation that says when there's a new person in the members table, go ahead and share the tool reviews doc with them so that they have access to it. And so that would be completely automated. You wouldn't have to worry about it. You could even make a automation that removes them if they leave the community. You could do that if you wanted to. And you can actually restrict published docs as well. So if publishing has a number of benefits. One of the bigger ones is just it makes your doc look like a really beautiful, presentable website. It kind of cleans up the interface and the appearance of the doc. And so we actually could have a restricted published doc where you have this published beautiful entity, but it still is only accessible to the people who the doc is shared with. Not all published docs have to be world viewable. So I think that might be a good solution for having a restricted group of people who are able to access the final product.
All right, so we have some solutions there, and once we are ready with this to launch, then we will think about this, but it's good to know that we have a few things that we can do there. It's not only about, not giving people access, but as you mentioned already, there might be sensitive data and maybe people doesn't want to show their name outside the community on what system they use and things like that. So I want to ensure that this will stay as exclusive as possible.
Yeah. And I think, there are other kind of examples where you might want a middle ground. I could imagine maybe you actually want to share the overall reviews, but provide the individual names. And so, maybe you have one doc, which is everyone in the world can see it, and it strips away the names, but it shows the reviews, it shows the comments and the ratings. And, is that
good idea? Yeah, good idea. But then you could have a free version and then
right.
Yeah, like the tool reviews might make sense to publicly publish, but then the ICOR systems that we build up there, they might be closed.
Right. So, but maybe members of the community want to find other people in the community who use a similar tool. Maybe they see a review that's interesting and they want to go talk to them. And so actually having the name or the email address of someone else in the community would be really important. You can actually...
What we will have there, I mean, a comparable version that I saw on using Airtable, they had just implemented a button to their direct messaging
Yeah, absolutely.
thing.
So
I think
we absolutely can do it. So you can see actually from Circle, it gives you a URL to their profile in the community, to their their person. And so right in the review, we can say this is the person who wrote this review.
Yeah,
in the
and
community,
for the systems, I know that is possible. There must be a link as well that gives you I think it's just the ID edit there in the URL, right?
It's quite simple.
So it will be for direct messaging the same thing, and then good to go.
Yep.
Awesome. So another reason to use Circle for all this.
Yeah, certainly integrating it into the platform where you're communicating and interacting makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So yeah, we came a long way now. And is anything missing from this session?
So I think we ended up in a state where we now have a people table, and it is linked up with the data being pulled in from Circle via the pack. We set up an automation so that anytime a new person is added, a new member to the community, we add them to the people CRM. I think the next steps here is we could add different sources of truth where we're pulling people in, maybe your newsletter, maybe something else. We will want to set up a little bit more work on the forums for people to be able to select. I think maybe one option that we haven't shown here. So I don't remember when we set up the forum, we had this person select, and this was pulling from the people table in CODA, the CODA CRM. But we actually now could actually have this come directly from Circle. In this case, we've kind of done that by proxy, if you will, because every time a new person is added in Circle, they're now added in the people table. But we've now ended up kind of this end state, which you wanted, which is if a new member is added to your community, as soon as that happens, this table will, pull in the new member and add it to the CODA CRM. And when they go and to fill in the form, their name will be there in the list, and they can find themselves. And that data will be linked with their Circle profile.
Yeah, probably again, it might be better to use the manual table there, and then just set a filter if the Circle part is filled out, then show name. Otherwise, don't show.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Really like it.
Yeah, I think we're in a good state. I think we have some kind of polish to do about getting the forms ready and figuring out how to embed it with the right privileges. But I think the kind of core structure is here. We've synced in the data from another source. We have the review table set up. If we go back to the top level diagram that you've created, we now have the productivity system database. We have the tools. We have this CODA CRM. We're now pulling in data from Circle. We built out what that tool review form would look like, kind of a simple example of it. We didn't yet do the type form, but that would look very similar to pulling in data from Circle. The only difference is we don't have to write the pack that's already created. So we can. But
we actually don't have the productivity system table database.
Oh, you're right.
But it is similar to the tools database, and then we will connect it together so people can actually pick the tools from the tools database and add them to their productivity system. So these are different parts. So I think with this in mind, this will close the last session that we made publicly about this. We will go now into the community, and we will make more sessions there. We will do the nitty-gritty now. We make the layouts, make this all fancy so this platform works, and then I will make an update video where we will then show the final product that we use inside the Paperless Movement membership in order to get this tool database and productivity system comparison table going. I'm so excited, and it's going actually very quickly. If we both would have more time, we might have finished this already weeks ago, but this is just how it is, and I'm still happy with the progress that we made.
For an hour or two a week, I think we're doing pretty good.
Absolutely. This just shows how easy it is to create something in CODA once you know the bells and whistles in there. And I think you did an awesome job explaining it in a very simple manner. So people, I think, was easy to follow when they followed from session 1 to this one. Everybody could build this now on their own as well. Yeah, and I'm excited to get this done.
Fantastic. Noah. Well, we'll go away. We'll make it all ready for the world to see, and I'm excited to show off what we've built then.
Absolutely. We will show so off. Yeah, this will be awesome. Noah, thank you very much again for your time. Everybody who was watching the live stream, thank you very much for joining. And yeah, we see us inside the community, and I catch you up next time.